What's up? I'm Ashley, and we're going to recap Grotesquerie episodes 1 and 2. So let's get into it. The episode starts off with a curtain burning, and I said, "Oh Lord Jesus, it's a fire." But really, it was Lois having a nightmare. She gets waken up by a phone call about a gruesome murder that's just been committed, so she makes her way to the crime scene. When she gets there, her coworker is like, "Girl, let the FBI handle this. You don't want no parts." She's like, "Oh, please, how bad could it be?" And I'm like, "Girl, don't you see your coworkers outside throwing up? What's wrong with you?" But she decides to go inside anyway. And once she stepped in that door, it was body parts everywhere. Turns out it was a family of 5. The dad was in the kitchen laid out with his head cut off. The rest of the family was sitting around the table with their arms tied up and his body parts hanging out their mouth. They served him right on up, put him right on the table on a plate. We find out they actually used seasoning like salt and pepper. And I said, "So he was tasting good too?" Then I started looking at the table and I said, "Well, what else they got?" I see some corn. I think I see some green beans. And before I saw some rolls and they were looking real good. But the rest of the family died from shock. But then they take us to a pot of boiling water. And I said, "Well, what's in that pot?" We don't get to see. But we later find out that they boiled the baby. Now, what the baby do? And I'm over here kind of shook because Lois didn't have any kind of reaction when she saw that baby in the pot. What's wrong with her? So after that long day of work, she's driving home, and then a homeless man hops in front of the car. He's telling her, "I'm going to kill you. I know where you live. I'm going to kill you. Now you tell me that, I'm going to run you over. Because who you think you going to kill? Who you think you going to run up on at their house? Not me. Because I'm going to get you first." Now, instead of trying to run him over, she looked in her purse for some more alcohol, but she didn't have no more because she drank it all up. She has a drinking problem. She's been drinking the whole time. Then some more homeless people start gathering around the car, and that's when she finally had enough. She turned on her siren and they all scattered. But there's something definitely more to this homeless man. When she finally gets home, we get to see her relationship with her daughter Mary, and Lois seems annoyed and a little disgusted at the fact that her daughter wants taquitos. "I don't know about you, but I love me some taquitos. Stop being a hater." But Merritt is really smart. I think they're watching Jeopardy and she knows all the answers. I'm like, "Okay, girl." We see that she's even good at puzzles. And I'm not really sure what her purpose is in the show, but I feel like she's going to end up playing a major part because all they do is really talk about her weight. But Lois has a rash she's trying to hide and don't want to talk about. So her daughter asked her about it, but Lois don't want to talk about it. She's like, "Mind your business." And I have a feeling that rash is just going to get bigger and bigger. Merritt does also ask her about work, and she's like, "You never asked me about work. Why you asking me now?" She says, "Because something is clearly bothering you." "So what is it? What happened?" Her mom's just like, "Mind your business." Lois either doesn't want to get her daughter involved and or she was just really shook. The next day, Lois goes to the hospital to visit her husband who's been in a medically induced coma for 28 days. She goes there and she speaks to the head nurse, Nurse Red, who really needs her ass whooped. Her mouth is reckless, but she suggests that her husband goes to a bigger hospital to get more support. But Lois tells her she doesn't feel like her husband is here with us anymore. Nurse Red told her, "Fight for your man. This man a keeper. And you know what would help if you would show him a little love? We got you on camera. We recorded you and we see how you act towards him. Give that man some love. You came in there talking about how you doing, with your mouth barely open when you said it." Lois tells her, "I can tell you never been married before, huh?" "Yeah, I'm right. And this is what marriage is. Showing up when times are hard. Mind your business." Turns out the only reason why she was recorded is because a patient got pregnant once under their care. So they're like, "We're not going to miss nothing." But guess what? You going to have me on camera reaching over that table. You won't miss that. Back at work, Lois tells her coworkers that no DNA other than the victims has been discovered. She also tells them that to be able to murder someone like this, it can't be their first time. They've had to have done this before. But they tell her there's no other records of a murder like this. Lois says, "I don't know. This seems familiar to me." And as she says this, a policeman comes in and tells her that she has a visitor. She meets Sister Megan, who is a reporter at the Catholic Guardian. She's a little creepy and obsessed with murder. She tells Lois her newspaper has increased the traffic on their website and that the murder victims were friends with her priest. Lois wants to meet the priest and Megan agrees. Lois continues to tell her more about the crime scene. Lois tells her the cops were called when the neighbor heard loud Mozart music coming from the house. Sister Megan then closes her eyes and says the requiem. Lois is like, what is that? She tells her that's the name of the Mozart song that was playing at the scene. She's like, how do you know that? And she's like, it just makes sense for the type of murder it was. Lois is suspicious of this, so she starts to reach for her gun, but decides not to use it. Instead, she decides to tell her more. She tells her the father who was murdered cheeks were thinly sliced and served with his liver, lungs, and kidney in some kind of a sauce that they have yet to identify, and that is evidence that the family had eaten this. And remember, they used salt and pepper, fennel seed, and cayenne, and was even roasted for 2 hours in a 375-degree oven with sunchokes and baby carrots. And while they're talking, Lois pours herself some more vodka in her cup, and it looks like blood is mixed with it. And the thing is, she even offered the nun some of this. What is going on? Then we have another scene with another murder where there's bodies cut in half, drained of their blood, hung on a wall in some kind of a message. Then there goes creepy Sister Megan showing up at the scene. Lois is like, what are you doing here? After telling her to leave, she decides to let her go inside to get a fresh pair of eyes on everything. Lois goes to the hospital again to visit her husband, and it seems like she's taking Nurse Red's advice. She starts talking to him, and the first thing she brings up is the fact that their daughter wanted to eat 2 dozen taquitos and how she can't believe it, and about how she wants to be on some TV show she doesn't agree with. Then she decides to lay with him in the bed and talk about old times. She then brings up the case and tells him that she needs him to wake up because she needs his opinion on this. When she gets home from the hospital, she senses that she isn't alone. So she pulls out her gun and points it at this black figure that leaves her house. She follows it outside and shoots her gun. Her daughter walks out and she's like, Ma, what are you doing? Why are you shooting your gun for? Who you shooting at? She tells her to go back in the house. And the next day, Lois talks to Sister Megan at the police station. They talk about the murders and how they seem to be connected to the Bible. Lois says she doesn't want to continue with the case, but she doesn't trust anyone else to do it. She tells her they got the results back from the black liquid that was at both crime scenes and lets her know it was sulfur dioxide. Sister Megan tells her that it's brimstone, and she starts to read her Bible verses. Her conclusion is that the killer and the killings are religious in nature. And that's the end of episode 1. We're going to move on to episode 2. The episode opens with Merritt, Lois, and her husband Marshall. Marshall is concerned with Merritt's health because she's so overweight and wants her to go to rehab, but she says she doesn't want to go to nobody's fat farm. She tells him she's happy with her body and he's just the one uncomfortable. After Merritt leaves, Marshall sarcastically thanks Lois for helping him with that conversation because all she did was pour herself another drink. Lois says, well, maybe we should all go to therapy. Merritt for her weight, me for drinking, and you for your sex addiction. She tells him, I know you've been cheating on me. I had you followed. I am a detective after all. He tells her he felt pushed away and that sometimes he does still love her. But Lois tells him she wishes he was dead and that he needs to leave. Get out. He tells her she's going to regret it if he does actually die. And look at him, in a medically induced coma. Lois is outside of her husband's hospital room, crying. Then Nurse Red walks up saying, what you crying out here for? Crying there. He needs to see it. Lois stands up, takes her earrings off, and says, I'm about to whoop your ass. Nurse Red is like, whoa, 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 no you not, because my security will come in here and break your hands. You're going to end up in the crazy house. I know you don't want that. I would have loved to see Nurse Red get dragged across that floor. Then Nurse Red goes to give Marshall a bath, but it looked more than a bath. Looked like she was trying to give him a happy ending or something, if you know what I mean. Lois sees this and she barges in the room. She's like, what you doing? They basically have this whole back and forth where Nurse Red belittles Lois, calling her weak and incompetent. Lois tells her she doesn't know how to do her job and calls her a predator for massaging her husband like that. Nurse Red says, go ahead, tell everybody. They won't believe you. They're not going to believe that a nurse is massaging on this man like that. They're going to think you're crazy. And you know what? Do it yourself. You take care of him and give him a bath. Put him in some kind of a warehouse and see how long he lasts in. And just to get this out the way, they have Merritt eating a whole ham by herself and being judged by her mother. Something is going on with weight up in here. Because why are they worried about this girl eating so much and having so much focus on it? Later on, Lois tells Sister Megan her theory about the killer being connected to the university. but Megan disagrees and shows her that she's been doing her own investigation. She's come to the conclusion that the killer thinks he's God. Then we go to church where we meet Father Charlie, who's giving a sermon. Later on, Father Charlie and Sister Megan go out for lunch, where they talk about who their favorite serial killers are. They talk about all these different murders and how he's impressed with her work. That conversation must have turned him on because he goes home and makes himself happy, if you know what I mean. But then he punishes himself for making himself happy. He starts whipping his own self on the back because he has just sinned. Lord forgive him. Sister Megan calls Lois to let her know she wants to publish the article suggesting that the murders were committed by Satanists. Lois says she doesn't think that's it. It says that she has a lead about the killer and that she's heading there right now. Lois and the SWAT team arrive at the suspect's house and they find the man dead on his mother's stomach. Later, Lois calls Sister Megan over for drinks and tells her what she found at the house. Lois tells her it was all staged by the killer and that the man they found had already been dead for weeks, and that his mother was still alive. She recites a passage from the Bible. Lois also says the killer left a calling card signed with his name, Grotesquerie. When Lois is on her way home, she sees the same homeless man she saw in the first episode, but this time she gives him money. When she gets home, she gives her daughter Merritt the box she found at the crime scene. She wants her to unlock it, but Merritt can't do it. Then Lois falls asleep, but she gets woken up by that same black shadow. She takes out her gun and tries to follow it, but then she gives up and sits down next to Mary. When Lois is going to bed, she gets a call about another murder, this time at a church, and when she arrives, everyone is shook. Sister Megan arrives and she sits down next to Lois while they stare at the new murder. The people murdered are all positioned to create the Last Supper, and at the center of it is the homeless man that she's been running into. Then the episode ends with Lois leaving the church. And that's pretty much it for both episodes. Leave all your thoughts and theories down in the comments so we can talk about it. And if you haven't already and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.